The word scarab often inflicts a sense of mystery and reverence, with visions of ancient writings and jeweled amulets, while dung beetle might not have the same effect. But the rolling of the dung ball is exactly what gives the scarab its distinction, and as Kepri is my witness, it is but one of the many gifts bestowed by the Scarabaeidae. Welcome to the Insect Spotlight Project, a channel dedicated to shining a light on insects, spiders, and any other creepy crawlies that get left out of the ecologic spotlight. Today, we are talking about the family Scarabaeidae, the scarabs. Scarabaeidae is a family in the order Coleoptera, the beetles. So if you want a broader look at all of Coleoptera, you can click that link above. The scarab beetles are a massive family of insects, with over 30,000 described species. But beetles as a whole are incredibly diverse. So even though Scarabaeidae is putting up some astounding numbers, they aren't even in the top 3 most diverse beetle families. But that does not mean we should just scoff and push them to the side. The Scarabaeidae are diverse not in just number, but in size, form, color, and niche, with a worldwide distribution spanning all continents except Antarctica. The ancient scholars must have also recognized their significance because the name Scarabaeidae comes from the Latin scarabaeus, meaning beetle. So seems like a pretty honorable title. The oldest known scarab fossil is Juraclopus rodendorfi, dating back 150 million years ago in the Upper Jurassic period. Now, I wish there was one trait in the Scarabaeidae that could immediately distinguish them from all the other beetles, but there isn't. There are even some lookalikes that used to be part of the Scarabaeidae, but have since been elevated to their own families. But there are still some shared characteristics in this family that can help you narrow down your search. Scarabs are generally heavy-bodied oval beetles. They have lamellate antennae, so their antennae have these plate-like lobes forming a club at their distal end. Now, these lobes can articulate, giving them a different appearance, so don't let that trip you up. If you flip them over, they should have 6 visible sternites on their abdomen, sternites being the ventral plates of the exoskeleton. Also, they'll usually have pretty robust scalloped forelegs, as many of them like to dig. Another great way to narrow down IDs on beetles is by counting their tarsal segments, the segments on their feet. In Scarabaeidae, they will have 5 segments on their forelegs, 5 on their mid, and 5 on their hind. So their tarsal formula is 5-5-5. Whereas, say, Cossinellidae, the lady beetles, have a tarsal formula of 4-4-4. None of these traits on their own will get you an ID, but together they can really help you narrow things down. But like all the other beetles, scarabs are holometabolists, meaning they have a complete 4-stage metamorphosis, going from egg to larva to pupa to adult. If you were a scarab beetle, or maybe you are, I don't know your story, but if you were a larval scarab beetle, or grub, emerging from your egg, life could look very different for you depending on your species. Many scarab eggs are laid underground, where the grubs can feed on the roots of grasses and other plants. You may have come across these little C-shaped larvae while digging around in the dirt. Other scarabs will find themselves in decaying logs, while others still will emerge to find themselves in a dead body, or a nice hunk of dung. The dung-feeding species are especially famous, and for good reason. These dung beetles will gather up formidable piles of vertebrate droppings and bury them away as larval meal prep. But depending on the scarab's size and meal choice, the length of this larval stage can vary greatly, with some taking a few months and others taking a few years. Dead wood isn't especially nutritious for a growing young lad, so the xylophagous species are particularly guilty of these long development times. The scarab pupae look like something out of an Alien movie, and this is largely due to them being exarate. There are 3 main types of insect pupae: obtect, exarate, and coarctate. An obtect pupa is like a butterfly chrysalis, where the appendages are fused to the body, giving a sleek, streamlined appearance. Exarate pupae have free appendages, giving them that sci-fi look. Coarctate pupae are like the houseflies, where the pupae is actually inside of a hardened larval exuvia called a puparium. However, within that exuvia, the pupae are exarate. So even though coarctate is kind of like a subgroup of exarate, we oftentimes distinguish between the two since they look so different. But okay, so we know scarab beetle pupae are exarate, but let's be even more annoyingly specific. Exorate pupae can either be dectitious or adectitious. Dectitious pupae have free and functional mouthparts, so they can bite you. Adectitious pupae do not have free mouthparts, so they cannot bite you. Exorate beetle pupae are adectitious, so you could even pop it in your mouth without fear of getting bit up. But don't do that. Eventually, these pupae burst open to reveal the formidable, brawny adult scarabs. And while maybe not all of them are formidable in size or appearance, this family does have some record holders. The Hercules beetle holds the title of longest beetle, with the males reaching up to 7 inches in length. The larvae of some scarabs will exceed 100 grams, making them the heaviest known insects. And the strongest animal for its size is the bull-headed dung beetle, pushing balls of dung over 1,000 times its body weight. Records aside, the adult scarabs will continue to feed on a variety of tasty treats, such as fruits, flowers, foliage, fungi, tree sap, animal carcasses, dung. There are some predaceous scarabs as well. One example would be Deltachylum valgum, which is a specialized millipede predator. A couple species even feed on snail mucus, like exclusively. Like the adults only eat snail mucus. Now, while eating snail mucus is undeniably one of the finer things in life, it is still a means to an end. The primary objective for an adult scarab is to pass on their genes. First step is to find a mate. Those lamellate antennae we mentioned are great for picking up scents of dung or carrion, but they're also helpful in picking up on female pheromones. But just locating a female does not guarantee anything. A lot of those scarabs have those giant horns for a reason. Scuffles for females are commonplace. Fighting as a whole is honestly pretty common in the scarabs. Even if a female is won, the fight isn't always over. In the dung beetles, for example, fights often break out while harvesting fecal matter. And even if you do manage to roll yourself a nice ball of dung, there are plenty of other scarabs that are going to try to rob you of your hard work. I keep saying these things as if I'm speaking to a dung beetle, like I'm warning my dung beetle son of all the obstacles he will face in the future. The dung ball rolling isn't just done by the male, though. Males and females will oft work together to lock down a sizable chunk of dung for their future children. And once they find a suitable spot, they'll also bury the dung ball to further protect it from their rivals and the elements. And thus, the cycle continues. Now, as much as I and many others love the colors, forms, and ecology of the scarabs, our relationship with them as a society isn't always harmonious. Japanese beetles are a common example, the grubs being a pest of turf grass, and the adults feeding in large number on the foliage of hundreds of different plant species. European chafers and oriental beetle larvae can cause similar damage to turf here in the US. Most regions have at least a couple scarabs they're scuffling with, and it is mainly the root-feeding larvae that cause issues. Cockchafers and garden chafers over in Europe, African black beetle over in Australia. You get the idea. And it isn't just turf either. Some crops are affected by scarab feeding. But overall, their negative impact on us is drastically dwarfed by the critically important services they provide for our ecosystems. Dung-feeding beetles are of course a godsend, saving the United States cattle industry alone hundreds of millions of dollars each year, protecting the cattle from various fecal pathogens. Plenty of other species act as a cleanup crew, with the xylophagous groups cleaning up dead wood, and the carrion-feeding species cleaning up carrion. The carrion-feeding scarabs often get overlooked, but a recent study published just a few months ago set out 52 guinea pig carcasses in the Amazon. They spread them out over season and habitat to study decomposition and scavenging. They found that 14 of the 15 guinea pigs set out in upland forest during the wet season were harvested and buried by a single species of scarab beetle, so they may play a bigger role than we thought. Also, as we mentioned, some scarabs are flower feeding, so they seem to provide some pollination services as well. And many scarabs like to burrow, both as larvae and as adults, so this helps to aerate the soil, improve drainage, and churn up nutrients. The sun's going down, I'm running out of light. Aside from ecosystem services, scarabs also hold cultural significance. Ancient Egyptians believed that the sun was rolled into place each day by Khepri, the scarab-faced form of their creator god Ra. Scarabs were also seen as a symbol of rebirth, seeming to come into being out of nothing, spontaneously generating from balls of dung. Although we know now that's not the case, it's understandable how they made that jump. But regardless of whether you're a follower of Kepri, we should revere scarab beetles, as their success often means our success. If you want to foster some cool scarabs on your property, leaf litter and coarse woody debris is a great start. Many of the more charismatic scarab species need these large pieces of decaying wood to complete their life cycle. Native plants are also going to be helpful for the flower and foliage feeding species, and all of these things together can help attract some vertebrates to your property and hopefully some dung beetles along with them. The scarabs are popular for good reason, but I hope now we can all agree that they are so much more than just a pretty face. As always, thank y'all for listening. And if you like the content, please remember to like and subscribe to keep up to date with future videos. And if you have any fun facts I missed, or any favorite species of scarab beetle, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. Peace, y'all.